Good evening. Thank you for coming to the January 8th edition of the Board of Selectmen Cemetery Commissioner Highway Commissioners meeting. Please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on the agenda is the approval of minutes, November 27th, 23, and December 18th of 23. Mr. Marcy.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of November 27th, 2023 and December 18th, 2023 as written.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Oh, thank you, Mr. Landry. This meeting is being recorded. Good job. Good job. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next on the agenda, appointments, election workers, term to expire August 31st, 2024. Erin Rim, Sandra Allen, Jane Johnson. Lori?
Good evening. These should have been on the agenda for the December 18th meeting that we had, but I didn't get them in time for Michelle to list them individually. This should be the last set of election workers until I do all the renewals in August.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's the board's pleasure.
Just a quick question, Mr. Chair.
Certainly.
Laurie, they expire August 31st, so they're not going to be...
Not even
Through
for a
the
full
presidential?
year. I just wanted to have them all expire at the same time. So in August, I'm gonna have to have all of them renewed again. Mhm.
Okay.
I just wanted to make it simple and keep the same expiration date.
Like simple, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion, questions, comments? What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, based on the recommendation of the town clerk, appoint the following 3 election workers, term to expire August 31st, 2024. Erin Rim, Sandra Allen, Jane Johnson.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next on the agenda, citizen comments. Are there any citizens here this evening who wish to speak on something not on this evening's agenda? Seeing and hearing none. Town administrators report. Mr. Ruda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the board's packets, I included a memo today, dated today, about FY25 budget planning. It says, the title is FY25 planning timeline and key considerations. We will have multiple factors to consider as we plan our FY 2025 budget. This memo is to make the Board of Selectmen and FAA aware of those factors and to propose a meeting timeline for the next 120 days. The first thing that I wanted to draw to your attention is there was a budget memo that went out to department heads that's dated December 29th. That's also in the packets. And just to briefly outline what was in that memo to department heads, it outlines the goal of streamlining the process of annual budgeting with the initial objective of providing more public detail by department of the financial needs of each department in the upcoming fiscal year. Couple of bullets on that. The known salary increases previously negotiated and contracted under existing collective bargaining agreements will be adopted as part of the annual operating costs and departmental requests. In other words, if we know what the actual cost is going to be, we're going to budget to that actual cost. It's not going to be subject to any change. It's a contractual obligation. We'll have an opportunity to explain that publicly as we go through this process. Each departmental request will include a narrative that will discuss the current fiscal year's challenges and highlights, the requested fiscal year's goals and initiatives, and a narrative of significant anticipated budget challenges going forward for FY25. Significant variations shall require an explanation by the department head, including all operational, payroll, and administrative costs. All FY25 budget requests must be received no later than the close of business on Friday, January 12th, 2024. And I've received some of them already. Another consideration in September of 22, The voters approved $7,566,838 in capital project spending for the Dudley Charlton Regional School District, and we've spoken about this over the course of the last year. As of May of 2023, the amount due for the Phase 1 Dudley Middle School roof replacement, Dudley Middle, Elementary, and Mason Road school safety projects, and architectural review was anticipated to be, this is Dudley's portion, $2,826,655. While we don't yet have the final number, because as the board recalls, the feedback that we received is people wanted to wait to get the final bill to get the actual number before we paid it. And we discussed that extensively over the course of the last 6 months or so. We don't have the final number. The Board of Selectmen will need to identify the source of funding to pay for the capital assessment in FY25. As the town has only combined total of $2,035,000 in combined qualifying stabilization accounts, that's our capital stabilization and regular stabilization account. The opioid stabilization account that we established, it cannot be used to pay for any amount of capital spending, while the other two can. So the amount that we have in stabilization basically is less than the amount that will be due for the entire project. It's almost certain that the town meeting will need to authorize the borrowing for the school capital assessment, which was authorized by the voters. And should the Board of Selectmen opt out of asking voters to debt exclude the borrowing, the annual debt payment will need to come from sources within the town's general fund. It's all common sense. The town's public safety radio system operates on copper lines, and I think we've discussed this before as well on several occasions. It operates on copper lines, which is the old telephone lines that have been in existence forever. That's now obsolete. Verizon doesn't support the maintenance of copper lines anymore. So, to dig down just a little bit without going too far down the rabbit hole, we have a series of voters and repeaters in West Dudley. Repeaters take the signal in West Dudley from public safety personnel, highway, and so forth. Anybody using two-way radio equipment, they send it back to dispatch, or a voter takes that signal and takes the best signal and sends that back to dispatch, so that an officer or a first responder or a DPW worker in West Dudley can be heard in dispatch and in the other vehicles. Without that capability, that's a real public safety risk for our first responders. If their radios don't work properly, because they're still on copper lines, that's an issue. So we've gotten grant funding for radio equipment replacement. That's digital radios and so forth. We've done that through regional dispatch. And we've subsidized some additional costs with radio equipment through our general budget over the past several years. Some of it was even ARPA money. But the challenge now is to pay for the switch over to fiber, which will support digital radio equipment. And the cost of that upgrade will be between $152,000 and $205,000 over the course of 5 years. There's different plans on how to pay for it. Some of it is more upfront money, some of it is more gradually paid year after year over the course of 5 years. But the cost the known cost will be $150 to $205. So we had initially planned on using revenues from the communication tower lease with Diamond Communications that's going up near the old sewer pump station on town-owned land to pay for this. But a lot of that money is now diverted to compliance and regulatory issues in and around the Eagle Drive neighborhood. And as the board knows, we're negotiating with Gentex to pay for those costs. And we're working with DEP and Water and Sewer to come up with some initial funding outside of our tax base to get design engineering completed in order for us to apply for additional funding to put a permanent water line down Eagle Drive and in and around those neighborhoods. That's the permanent solution. That will provide clean water to that neighborhood from our public water supply, and it will essentially stop the bleeding and give us the opportunity to use some of that money from the communications radio tower to pay for the public safety radio, digital radio equipment. So those are some moving pieces that we have to consider going forward in planning for next year's budget. So, again, this memo kind of outlines the long-term solution to the immediate response action with Gentex. I'll read it quickly. The permanent solution to the IRA that the town and Gentex are required to maintain compliance with, as mentioned above, is a public water line that will be installed in and around the Eagle Drive neighborhood, tying in all the homes in that area and providing those homes with access to treated, tested, and clean water for the public, from the public water supply. To that end, the town is working in cooperation with DEP and Water Sewer Commissioners to identify a source of funding to pay for the initial cost of engineering and designing a plan for the water line. We're also working with town council, our engineers, and the legal team from Gentex on negotiating a cost-sharing solution to pay for those expenses. Something else to consider in 25. Senior positions to be replaced in FY 2025. The town can anticipate the need to replace at least three senior positions, senior management positions, within the next 120 days, which will require the attention and additional time from my office and the Board of Selectmen. Where I don't anticipate a major impact on the current budget, we will have an additional draws on our time, and we will need to move forward with hiring several currently funded support positions that as of today are vacant as support in these three senior positions. In other words, we currently have some support positions funded. We haven't hired into them yet. We're going to have to continue to fund those positions because the positions that are being replaced, in order to be able to successfully recruit into those positions and support those positions, they are absolutely going to need those support positions filled. So going forward, we need to consider leaving those positions funded, even though they haven't been filled as of tonight. Next, we have some collective bargaining agreements that are expiring on June 30th and 24. That's the fire department and the highway department. Both the fire and highway collective bargaining agreements will expire on June 30th, 2024. Both bargaining units have submitted requests to my office to begin scheduling bargaining sessions, excuse me, with the objective of negotiating and reaching an agreement before June 30th of 2024. I think it's in the best interest of town to move forward, beginning the process as soon as reasonable in order to provide sufficient time for budget planning. As always, I will work with the Labor Council as required in preparation for presenting options to the Board of Selectmen. I anticipate that this will have some additional time requirements on the part of the Board of Selectmen, so we will try to use scheduled board involvement at times that are previously scheduled. In other words, if we have a budget hearing, if we have a regularly scheduled meeting, we'll tail end onto that, probably an executive, as much as we possibly can. Coming up on February 14th, we have a joint meeting with the school committee and Charlton. There will be a joint meeting with the Charlton Board of Selectmen, Charlton Town Administrator, and FAA, and the District School Committee on February 14th, 2024. And I strongly encourage full attendance at this meeting, as we will have the opportunity to hear about the FY25 district assessment to both towns, and both boards and committees can ask questions and state their positions. This meeting will be critical for the Board of Selectmen to provide direction to me in terms of my recommended FY25 budget, and critical for the FAA to provide a recommendation to voters at the Maytown meeting. As this is a public meeting, I will also be asking all department heads to make an effort to attend, to provide input, and to ask questions as may be required. And then finally, Mr. Chairman, I proposed some timelines going out about 90 days. For tonight, though, for the next 30 days, I would propose a February 5th Board of Selectmen FAA joint meeting, where we will hear the narratives and budget requests and explanations publicly from the fire department, police department, highway recycling, town clerk, treasurer collector, council on aging, town planner and planning board, and then a follow-up meeting on Thursday, February 8th, a Board of Selectmen FAA joint meeting. We will hear the budget request, budget narratives, budget justification from the Board of Assessors, Veteran Services, Water Sewer, Town Accountant IT, Administration, and Selectmen budget, I'll present those. Municipal Expense Building Inspector, I'll present those. And then the Library Board of Health and the FAA Reserve request. And that will take us up 30 days to February 14th. And then February 29th, FAA meeting, I'll be meeting separately with the FAA on the 29th, and then we'll work on the March schedule. So we're pretty busy over the course of the next 3 months. If there's any direction you want to give me now, or any questions I can try to answer, I'm happy to do it.
Mr. Sullivan?
Where will the meeting of the two towns be held? They're gonna have that at Shepherd Hill, or?
It will be one of the schools, I'm not sure exactly where right now.
And I guess I'll pick up the mantle of Mr. Joseph, who, if he was on the board at this time, would emphatically state that the position of the Dudley board, I'm not asking for a position, would be nothing over 2.5%. I mean, any request is gonna far outstrip our new revenue. And we can't afford increases on the school side, or the town for that matter, which I know historically we never do, of greater than 2.5%. I think at some point, Mr. Chair, if Mr. Root is looking for direction, that should be a stated position of the board, or a stance of the board, that anything over that is gonna get pushed back. It says a pot of gold out there we don't know about, but I don't think there is.
No idea. Anyone else have any comments on?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Jonathan, this is a great summary. There's a lot to think about here, a lot of stuff coming up. We just want to make sure that we're talking about it a lot, so there's no surprises. It's open, it's transparent, people know what we're working on, so this is a great start.
One more, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Sullivan.
That was a great report, but lost in that, not lost, don't overlook in that, was the upcoming cost that the townspeople, I think legitimately voted overwhelmingly to approve going forward. But at that time, when people said, how are we gonna fund it? There's no answer. We still don't have an answer, so people can't lose sight of that. There's gonna have to be a funding mechanism outside of the school budget, I'm sure, and the town budget. We don't have that much built in anywhere, where it's gonna have to be some kind of external function of another vote to fund these projects. So those are pretty substantial. It's a big number.
Agreed. And Mr. Sullivan, I will echo your 2.5%. I know you didn't ask for a vote or a consensus, but I just wanted to publicly state that I agree with you. I think you could bury your head in the snow wearing hearing protection and you'll still hear. People don't want any more taxes, and I'm with them. They don't want anything above what's just base. Not 2 years in a row. Not even, I don't see that happening again in the near future at all, Mr. Morrison.
Well, to that point, I mean, the governor's announced some 9C cuts that are coming, and one of the things I've been very afraid of was local aid getting squeezed for Dudley. It's critical to putting together this budget, and we'll have to wait and see how that actually comes in. But it's also a good time to talk about how these numbers get put together for the school, Chapter 70 and such.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman, as of today, the state was looking at the fact that they over-projected their revenues, that their tax collections are way down.
$1 billion now.
So we can anticipate the squeeze.
That's right. It's predictable.
Our revenues will be annualized because that's all we can do at this point in time. And I thought maybe the best thing for us to do going into the February 14th joint meeting is to have heard from all of our department heads, so that everyone on the FAA, everyone at this table, understands the needs of the departments on the general, under the general government side of the equation going into the school assessment request.
If I can be so bold to ask Mr. Ruda, what's the purpose of the February 14th meeting? And I don't mean this negatively towards anyone in this room at all. If we only have a certain amount that we can spend, what's the purpose of it?
Well, I think it serves probably more of a purpose to let the public hear what the request is. After having heard what the request is from the municipal side of the government, hearing, and we're purposely presenting and changing our format to be hyper-communicated and give citizens the ability to come in with the FAA, with the Board of Selectmen, and talk to the department heads directly through the chair if they wish to do so, and hear exactly what those needs are, what the challenges were this year, what the challenges are next year, and why the cost for each part of their budget has gone up and down. That way, when we go to the meeting on the 14th, people will already know the same thing the Board of Selectmen knows, the FAA
Good.
knows, and they'll be able to publicly hear the request from the school, and it won't be that the Board of Selectmen hates public education, or the town administrator hates public education, or anyone else does. It'll be, this is the priorities, this is how we laid out the priorities, this is what we have to spend. We talked about revenues in advance of that, and people can hear from itself. It's more, we know that we're gonna go in there knowing that we have a certain amount of money to spend, period. The public needs to know that too, so I think that's the benefit of having this joint meeting.
Excellent. So, yes, Mr. Sullivan.
Just to piggyback on your question and his response, when we had the 400 people plus at the town meeting last year, which was an outstanding turnout, I mean, I think this board has been clear, I know I have, ever since I got elected, I'd rather have too many people there than not enough. This will give the people a chance. Like, we get to town meeting, sometimes you get bogged down in the minutiae. People want to go line by line, like the lady that time trying to get Mr. Ruda to answer every department's budget question at town meeting. No, the time to do it is at a budget hearing. And while I certainly wouldn't expect 400 people to show up, we'll find a way to make it fit if they do. But that's what, like the town administrator said, that's where you get your questions. You have a chance to come in, and Dean's fire chief is the department head here tonight. That gives him a chance to get up there and sit, and when someone says, well, why do you need this? Well, this is why I need that. Whereas opposed to town meeting, when someone gets up and says, I want someone to explain to me, and they expect the answers from us five or six counting the town administrator, the chance is to get your town side answer. Then February 14th, I hope there's another 400 that come because they can have a chance to ask the schools, as opposed to, again, getting bogged down and everyone does a great job trying to get the information out, but you start getting into, well, how come you need, X number of dollars for supplies? Well, we talked about that back in February, not the Maytown meeting. So, as you like to say, let's have a conversation, let's get some participation. Even if you don't ask a question, show up, bring your pad and paper or your laptop, follow along, get your answers when the people are in front of you. Don't get it on social media, don't get it at the coffee shop. Not that it's right or wrong, come and get it from the old saying, the horse's mouth.
Excellent, thank you. Could we ask for this meeting to be recorded?
Oh, I think it will be recorded, right?
Okay. Be great if it was in
We'll make sure it is.
Thank you. Be great if it was in Dudley. I know the past couple of years have been in Charlton. It'd be great. I think we'd get quite a turnout if it was in Dudley. I really do. Anything else on Town Administrator's report?
Make a motion to accept as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next on the agenda, we have new business, updated policies, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, Quarry Policy, update to Town of Dudley Employee Handbook. Mr. Ruda?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to defer to Michelle on these policy updates.
Hello. These are 3 policies that came from the Edward
Yeah.
Collins HR policy, the grant. to the handbook, and we've updated the handbook, and you have it in your packet.
And they've received legal review.
They have received review.
So, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Sullivan?
once again, thank you for the work on this. Thank the Collins Center. And I get 6 emails a week from them through our Selectmen's account. And it's nice to see that we take advantage of them, as do other towns. So, my simple question, these are just to bring us, my expression, into the 21st century of HIPAA, Corey. So we're just
Correct.
doing a little catch up and just tightening up. So I appreciate the work that was done on it, and appreciate the Collins Center.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Any further discussion on this? It's the board's pleasure.
Chair, anything open? Goodness,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
I
Mr.
move
Morrison.
that we accept these updated policies as written. I've looked at them and they should be included.
we'll list them, we just want to-
Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA policy, Corey policy, and the update to Town of Dudley Employee Handbook.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next on the agenda under new business, we have a tax bill information session. And what the board wanted to do was, as Mr. Ruda had said before, enhanced communication. We've had a number of residents confused about their new tax bills. And we asked the assessor and the collector treasurer to be here tonight just to give a brief overview of how the tax bills are computed and why your tax bill could be different than what you think the approved tax increase was. That's all. Just a quick explanation, if we could, that'd be great. Well, I don't mean to hurry you by saying quick, but basically saying I'm not asking for a 130-page PowerPoint with animatronics and such. Thank you, Rich and Lisa,
Lisa.
for coming.
We're-
I-
You want to start?
I think that's the big thing, just how are the tax bills computed? Anything people would want to know why their tax bill is different from what the levy that was approved.
So let me start by saying, your taxes are always gonna be what your new assessed value is times the new tax rate. Just multiply it out, that's your yearly taxes. I believe what's happening on social media, people are saying, oh, I'm up 33%, I'm up 20%. What they're doing is they're comparing their first 2 quarters to their last 2 quarters. So what the taxpayers need to know is when the preliminary bills go out, we don't have your new assessed value for the fiscal year, nor do we have the new tax rate. So in order to generate revenue to the town, the preliminary tax bills are based on your entire total previous fiscal year's taxes. We divide that by 4. That goes on the first quarter and the second quarter. We then get your new assessed value, the new tax rate in the fall. People are questioning, why are some towns, they have this all set in July and August? Well, we can't set the tax rate until our fall town meeting is done. So once we get the new assessment and the new tax rate, we calculate what your actual taxes are going to be. Then we take that total and we subtract what you paid in August and what you paid in November, your preliminaries. Whatever the balance is that's left, we split over your last 2 quarters, which is February and May. So you can never compare the first 2 quarters with the last 2, because the first 2 are based on your old assessment and the old tax rate. I don't know how many times a day I get phone calls and people coming into my office after they get their tax bills, upset because the quarters are so much higher than the first 2. Always compare your total from last year to your total from this year. Never compare the quarters, because they'll never be equal, and the first 2 will always be lower than the last 2.
Thank you.
Excellent explanation, Lisa.
Very good. Do you have anything to add, Rich? That was pretty good.
I'd love to follow her, but I think she's got it. The only thing you'd really want to look at, if you had anything done to your home, put a new roof on it, anything like that, and that might have raised the value. if the previous owner might have had an exemption or what have you, that might change what had been paid in the previous.
That exemption follows through the entire fiscal year. So there was a person that just purchased the house and saw like a $500 increase in their taxes from the previous preliminaries, I believe. That was because they purchased a home from a senior citizen who was receiving a $500 41C exemption. That stays with the property for the entire fiscal year. So that homeowner, that new homeowner, reaped the benefits of the prior owner. Now that they're the new owner, that $500 exemption comes off for the next fiscal year, and that's where they were seeing an increase. And I encourage anybody, if you're not happy with your assessed value, if you're questioning why your quarters are so off, pick up the phone and call me, shoot me off an email. I don't rush anybody on the phone. I was on with a woman today for 30 minutes explaining every question that she asked. Come to the professionals. Don't just guess out on social media and feed off of so many untruths that are on there. I have an open door policy. Call me, email me anytime. I'll be happy to take the time to explain it to you.
Yep, Mr. Marcy?
Fantastic, guys. I think just that little explainer, somehow we could put a link to this part of the video or whatever, transcribe what Lisa said and put it out there.
Also, I just want to mention that I had an article in the newspaper in the Webster Time about 15 years or so ago. It was called Ask the Assessor. And I feel as though now all the things that are going on out there, I'm going to start the article back up again. And the way it works is a taxpayer asks me a question. I'll post the question in the Times and I'll put my answer there as the assessor. So I believe the first one that I'm going to do is just exactly what I explained tonight, because not everybody watches these meetings.
No, but a lot of them read on social media, Mr. Chairman, and they do read the Times. That's a great.
And it's a free paper. Nobody's paying for this paper. It goes to every household, so.
Get the word out in many different.
And any taxpayer, please, if you have a question and you want to see it in the newspaper, ask the question. I'll put it in the paper and I'll answer it for everybody to see.
Always. Mr. Sullivan?
You know, too, again, thank you, Lisa. That was very succinct and informative and rich with his add-on. So, when it comes to the actual tax rate, outside of debt exclusion, maturing debt, add-on debt, when someone, as you say, Lisa, you sound like me there for a minute, social media, I'm sick of the selectmen raising our taxes. I'm sick of you people at town hall. Can you give a nickel dime-sized version of how we don't set the tax rate?
Well, you have the budget and your debt exclusions and your overrides, whatever's voted on at town meeting, and you have your values. One's divided into the other to come up with a tax rate.
And it goes to
To
the
reach
state.
the levy limit that we have. Once all that's done, it goes to the Department of Revenue, and they go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and they make sure everything's done properly before they allow the tax rate to be set. And trust me, they go through
Oh,
everything.
no. What, can't think of the lady's name, who's been there forever. We've had many discussions with, can't think of her name, you know what I'm talking
Deb
about.
Wagner?
So, and just for the people out there, that's not unique to Dudley. That's how every town's taxes are calculated.
Correct.
In city.
The entire state of Massachusetts, that's how it's
Right.
done. And we're not at somebody told me that I was wrong the way I was assessing, and that I should only be assessing their house for a percentage of its full value. We're not Connecticut. Connecticut assesses at 70%. We're mandated to assess at fair, full cash value at 100%. And the reason why it might be off a little bit with the market is because the Department of Revenue requires me to use sales from the last completed calendar year. So when I assess the properties in August, September, October, we're still in 2023. I can only use 2022 sales. Now, with that being said, I can also look forward into the new year to see what the market's doing. Is the market leveling out? Is it still increasing? Is it decreasing? And I can use that towards the assessments for that calendar year, 2022, because I have a range that I can be in.
Mr. Chair, you beat me on that one, Lisa, because I was gonna say, you're also taxed in arrears, like you just said, like, and it's the value set of 2022. So if someone has a question and they come before you, bless you, you also have your, probably gonna say the wrong word, triennial property reevaluations, right?
So we have to assess every single year now.
Oh,
And
every
we
year.
used to do the triannual revaluation, they changed that about 10 years ago. Now we only do it every 5 years. But we have to do interim, I call it a mini reval every year. It used to be, you didn't change the values from year one until you had the triennial recertification. And that just didn't work, because if the market was really high, people were paying high taxes for 3 years until we did the mass reval. Or if it was really low, they were paying low taxes. So now we have to tweak those values every single year according to market and cost and income. And then we do the large project every 5 years.
And once again, that's mandated by the state. That's not something that
It's not an option.
Lisa Berg and her board came up with advice from Rich. We do it the same as every other town, city.
Mr.
I was
Marcy?
speaking with some Charlton selectmen, and they're going through the same thing. They were gonna have the same meeting, just to, as a refresher, so this is very timely.
So
Anything?
if I could
Oh, sure.
emphasize two things that were just said. We're backing into a budgeted dollar amount. So town meeting approved the spending of this amount of money, of which the levy limit, a whisker less than that, to come up with your tax rate. But the important part, Mr. Sullivan made mention of the Department of Revenue. We don't put together some numbers that we think are nice. There are numbers that have been scrutinized by the Department of Revenue, along with the other 351 cities and towns, that pass muster. They are solid estimates. They aren't, they're meant to be attainable, just because you would never want to be in a situation where the last week in May, you're short by $1 million, and all of a sudden, what do? It's supposed to be the other way around. You should bet the house that, yes, all of this will be collected, and that's why each year you have a surplus. You know, you don't spend your whole paycheck that week. The end of the year, there's almost that lag, specifically so that you don't know what's going to happen in May of next year. No one does. The idea that there's some flexibility in there, and that you're not spending down to that bottom line.
Yeah, but I think that that's what Rich just said, and as Lisa explained, the fine-tooth comb theory with DOR, that applies to our revenue projections as well, and it's gonna apply, we've actually started our revenue projections for '25, and beyond annualizing, it's still too early to get the final fine-tooth comb inspection from DOR, where they actually go in and they say, which it's kind of ironic that they overprojected their own revenues on the state level, but
Isn't it?
but they're all over the municipalities to make sure that we are within 5% or less to project our revenues for the upcoming fiscal year. As Rich said, it's not something that we put together just so it looks nice. It has to go through a series of sign-offs at the state level, DOR and so forth, and it almost always ends up with a surplus amount, like it did in the previous year.
You have to give an explanation, a detailed explanation for any estimated revenues and why it's, up a certain percentage.
That was great.
Did we have a minute? I'll have to excuse myself. The previous selectmen's meeting, I was not able to stay for the entire meeting, coughing in the background. It's not what we should be doing, given we're still sort of in the shadow of COVID. But at the meeting prior to that, Mr. Sullivan had asked, what if this didn't, the override did not go through? That variable, if you just net out the $1.7 million, it brings your tax rate below $950. So I think that's a good talking point, depending on how you're calculating that out, anywhere between $946, $948 per thousand. But then again, that's sort of a fluid number, but it's nowhere near the 1016 it was last year, or the current tax rate right now. So I agree, that would have been a giant step backwards, the idea that we would have lost an additional step trying to keep up with things.
Agreed.
So it's fair to say, Mr. Chairman, and Rich and I have not had a conversation about this at all, that trying to manage Dudley's budget with a tax rate under $10 per thousand was not a scare tactic. What we passed, what the voters went to the polls and passed was appropriate to the situation, because there is no question with a tax rate under $10 per thousand, that with those cuts that we were talking about were probably underestimated at that rate.
Anything else? That was great.
Thank you, guys.
Just wanted to be able to communicate so people can understand, and both did that. Thank you.
Yeah, let's,
Appreciate it
Mr.
very
Chairman,
much.
let's showcase this on social media so people can.
And let's save it, and maybe next year, just before the bills come out, we can post this, put this somewhere before the bills come out, get people ready. Instead of putting out the fire, let's stop it from starting.
We'll pick up the phone.
Pick up
Yeah,
the phone.
the door's open.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Good job.
Great job.
Next up, we have a public hearing, Dudley Links Operation LLC, change of manager for Dudley Links Operations LLC, DBA Dudley Hill Golf Club, located at 123 Center Road, Dudley, Mass., with the physical address of 80 Airport Road. New manager Sophia A. Cornell, hope I said that right. Going to open the meeting at 7:20 p.m. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Andrew Upton for the licensee. With me is Sophia Cornell, the proposed manager of record, and Bob Levine from Nichols. Sophia is qualified in all aspects for this position. She is a U.S. citizen, a Mass resident. She has extensive experience in the sale and supervision of the sale of alcohol. She is TIPS trained. She's on staff at the facility, and we believe she will be a great addition to the supervision of alcohol service at the college facilities. And with that, we're glad to answer any questions.
Right. Does the board have any questions?
Quick one, I'm sure she's gonna speak, but can the proposed candidate touch on these experiences and work history in the field? If you don't mind.
Sure. I've worked with the college. I moved from Pennsylvania to this college to work as their catering director with dealing with alcohol. Before that, I worked at Lockheed Martin. That didn't have any alcohol in there, but I did know all of the Serve Safe certifications for that as well. I also, before that, I worked at P&G, Procter & Gamble. They didn't have any alcohol, but we did do outside catering that did have the outside alcohol. Before that, I worked at Disney World, but there was no alcohol there. But I was in contact with it, so, yeah.
So right now with the college, like, take a snapshot in time, right now, what do you do at the college?
I work at the, in the Bison Den. I am the assistant general manager, so I do the ordering of the liquor, I do the food orders, I make up the menu, we do the hours there, and serve food, and I also cook it as well.
You supervise the bartenders?
Bartenders
such?
and the bartenders and the cooks.
So you're currently supervising alcohol
Yes.
at Nichols already? Got it. Anyone have anything else? Mr. Clark, you raised your hand, please. Just tell everyone who you are and where you live, please.
Richard Clark, 65 Airport Road. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to ask a question, if I may. I noticed Mr. Levine's presence here, and obviously is an association with the college. A college has certain tax exemptions. Do they apply with regards to the Bison Den, and is this somehow unfair competition for the restaurateurs, if you will, in the town that are paying full freight as far as taxes go?
Taxation of the golf club.
I don't think that the golf club is taxed. I mean, I think it is, I think it applies for that exemption.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't believe they're exempt from alcohol tax, like, like all the other bars, they have to apply. It's not like the, nonprofit status or property tax that they don't have to pay. I believe, it's like the meals tax, for example, you charge the meals tax, because the town passed that as a policy.
Yep, we collect and pay the meals tax. Alcohol's taxed at the wholesale level, so essentially we're paying that, and we pay property taxes on this facility.
I think we answered that question, didn't Mr. Clark ask that question initially about a year ago? Did we get the answer on that? I think we did. Yeah.
As far as the taxation.
As far as the taxation, it doesn't qualify as part of the college campus.
Got it. Okay.
That's good you asked that, because if you're thinking of it, there's probably more people that are thinking of it.
Well,
It's good
quite
to-
honestly, I know social media is somewhat in disrepute, but especially in front of this panel, but there was a question that was raised, and I thought it was something that needed to be brought up in public forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I may,
Mr. Sullivan?
the Bison Den's only been open, what, a year or so, year and a half? And I'd hate to put the lieutenant on the spot, because he's filling in admirably tonight for the chief.
Yes.
But
Admirably.
as the attorney said, they do fall under the wholesale tax, to buy their liquor. And I put the lieutenant on the spot, we haven't had any issues with Nichols not complying with either local regulations and or state. Like, for example, they're not getting caught pouring vodka from something into another bottle.
Good evening. No, we haven't had any issues over there at that property address, no.
What we usually ask when somebody wants to do a transfer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was a good question, but yeah, they're not exempt from all rules like that. That's cut in stone. You have to buy your booze, your beer from vendors. Thank you.
Thank you. One question, just for the people listening at home. Is this private, meaning just for Nichols College, or can someone,
No, it's not
Show
private.
up.
We have people from the town that come in.
oh, Mr. Clark could go, have a club sandwich and a Miller High Life? And
Yep, you can also come in for breakfast starting next week.
So what are the hours?
Hey.
11 to 8, Wednesday through Sunday. And April 1st, we will be back open Monday through Sunday, 11 to 8.
Because of the golf.
Yes.
Well, when you said something about breakfast, that could be a limited schedule.
So we're gonna do it on the weekends. So it's gonna start Friday the 19th from 8 to 11, and then 11 o'clock, we're gonna go right into our lunch menu.
If I'm not mistaken, that will be the only place in Dudley serving breakfast that doesn't have a drive-through. You want to count Cumberland's?
Yeah. No, it's good.
I shouldn't have said that. Any additional comments from the board?
None for me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. What's the board's pleasure?
Close the hearing.
That's right, I have to close the hearing. Should have had my coffee today. We're going to close the hearing at 7:26 p.m. Mr. Marcy?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the change of manager for Dudley Links Operations LLC, does business as Dudley Hill Golf Club, located 123 Center Road in Dudley, with the physical address of 80 Airport Road. Our new manager is Sophia A. Cornell.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Next on the agenda is old business. We don't have any. Departmental communication. Fire chief, do you have anything? Nothing? Lieutenant Anise, do you have anything? No report. Mr. Carmignani? Thank you for coming earlier. I appreciate communicating that to the taxpayers. Appreciate it.
No, absolutely. That's a great place to start, Mr. Chairman. Please, wouldn't want to line outside of the assessor's office, or my office for that matter, but the idea, if there's a question, it is real easy to find better information. Some questions are rather simple, some require a little bit of research, but at the end of the day, your assessor, Lisa, talking about how she had successes, she took a few minutes, and, success is contagious, and I think that's a good thing. I am going to smile and say, yes, you have your tax bills out. They are due February 1st. It is February 1st by Mass General Law. If you're looking at your tax bill and there is something on it other than real estate taxes, interest and expense lien, road betterment, water, sewer that's unpaid that represents a rider on there, everything is due on that third quarter. So on February 2nd, you will be paying interest on what hasn't been paid from the previous year. So that's set by statute. Again, you're going to have a bill that has two segments on it. There's the February 1st amount due. There is the May 1st amount due. You're not going to get a separate billing at the beginning of April. While we're talking about taxes, because they're just so much fun on a Monday night, once a year we send out the very large excise commitment 1. If you are watching the February 14th joint meeting between the Board of Selectmen in Charlton, Board of Selectmen in Dudley, and the school committee, you should have an excise bill for every registered vehicle that you have. It's not set by statute, it's something internal. Try to make sure that the water and sewer bills that go out align with that, so that people are mailing in one envelope, one check, paying 2 or 3 bills. They're going to be available online. This is the time where we're talking about revenues, and not to get too far off topic, there's going to be 10,000 bills that go out. And if there's due in 30 days, that's how many bills per day, even if you start counting Saturdays and Sundays. So that's the one bill I say it would be greatly appreciated if you could put that in the mail sooner rather than later. I'll make the statement, Unipay online is 50 cents per cart. So when I go through and I pay Rich Carmignani's water bill and whatever vehicles I have, it's still 50 cents. And it's still cheaper than the 63-cent stamp that you're going to mail it in. Best way to do it, you will be able to find your vehicle, you'll be able to find your water bill, and it will be the exact amount. And it's 50 cents for an ACH payment, which is an automated clearinghouse. It's your check online, 100% safe. I use them for all of my payments, so if anybody ever questions anything, I have a third-party timestamp coming to my email that says, Rich Carmignani paid for that white van he drives around in. Also, it's a little busy on the second floor because you have dog licenses, you have abatements, exemptions, everybody who's getting a bill coming up in the next 2 or 3 weeks for an automobile that they traded in or transferred somehow, there's going to be a whole load of things. So back to that first comment, please plan your time wisely. It's always good to accommodate everybody, and some people do insist on that face-to-face interaction. Some people do pay cash. There are other options out there. Always happy to have somebody come in again. Monday is our late night. I'd love to see a regular crowd. You know, people will be coming in. A few things off of the town administrator's report when it comes to budgeting. The Hampshire Council of Governments Insurance Trust has yet to hold their rate hearing, or their all of the units get to vote on the next increase. So right now, that's something up in the air. Worcester Regional Retirement System, again, they're going to have their actuaries come out and give us the bill. There's sort of a framework ahead of that, but there's some bigger pieces that are going to come into place. The one good thing, and we always end on the positive, is that we had a rate lock for the next 2 years when it came to property and casualty. So the idea is it's a building partnership. It's almost like the credit union. We build up experience points with them, and they are very encouraging on their renewal, the idea that we'd like to be in very strong into that third, fourth, fifth year of making sure that public safety does A, B, and C. You have your trainings, all of these thresholds are met, so that we're doing the right things. It's so much easier to have some trainings as opposed to experiencing a loss and then trying to do some investigation afterwards. Again, I fully expect to be here for that. If there's questions on my budget, treasurer collector budget, that's kind of multifaceted, I'd send the invitation off now. There's going to be some things there that when we get a bill from the dispatch center in Webster, it's sort of a hard number. It's not really negotiable. Same thing with the health insurance. It's our enrollees times the new rate. There's a few things that are sort of beyond our control. We also have some debt coming up. I'd love to tell you what interest rates are going to do. The prediction was they were going to be down by 10 basis points as of a year ago, and I don't think that was a correct prediction. To the flip side, it's going to cost us more money to borrow money, but we're earning more on investments. But then again, we're really close to the vest on this because we had an increase of $1.7 million, which was not reflected in the first and second quarter. We're only going to get $950,975 in the third quarter and the fourth quarter because we didn't use an actual tax rate until we hit the third or fourth. So that excess that was allowed to sit for a week, 2 weeks until it was spent didn't get a chance to earn that interest because money's going out as fast as it's coming in. It's a cash flow issue.
One quick question, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
Probably more of an assessor question.
Oh.
Treasurer Rich touched on it briefly. If you have a vehicle and then you don't have the vehicle, there is a methodology in place, a process where you go see the assessors or
Yep.
get the form, but you have to show proof of either disposition of the vehicle
Correct.
in order to get credit on that bill. We're not, the town of Dudley, if you get rid of your car after 6 months, it's not gonna tax you for a full year. So there is a process, and if you have got rid of your vehicle and you get a bill you don't agree with, there's a process to question it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There is a process for just about everything. And it's
There
not always
is.
on Monday nights. Thanks, Rich.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Rich.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda, board members' comments. Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to hope everyone had a nice holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We had our first significant snowfall of 2 years. And unfortunately, I think the highway department did a great job. Unfortunately, our manpower situation, our superintendent was out plowing today, as he has done, but a lot of what we talked about, Mr. Ruda mentioned earlier, came true. We lost 4 full-timers? 4 or 5?
Over the course of 2 years, we lost 7.
Yeah, so 7 over 2 years, we replaced them, but we lost, I think, 4 between the override and today. We're still trying to replace them. We lost foreman, 2 drivers, a laborer. So we're replacing them. We're churning through people. People have taken jobs and have already left because of the private sector, but I think with what Jeff was able to roll out on behalf of the taxpayers, they did an admirable job. And driving around town today, you know, all the main thoroughfares were down to water fairly early during the day. Maybe the side roads don't get traveled. We'll get tomorrow with the warm weather, but we did lose a lot of people, folks. We talked about it. Police department talked about it. It's a fact of life. We lost a lot of institutional knowledge, a lot of hard workers, and we're trying to build ourselves back up. So appreciate the patience. There are people that do reach out and say, I think we did a good job, or the town did a good job. We certainly appreciate when they recognize people for the effort they put forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little advice, give yourself a little extra time with the weather the way it is and the roads. Be safe, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Marcy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, same. Just, Highway did a great job, all things considering. I never felt that, my road was, it's always hard to get up my hill, but, you know, they were there, you know, constantly, the loader and several other vehicles, so thank you to everybody who was out trying to keep our roads safe. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Marcy. I want to thank the assessor and the treasurer collector for coming tonight to give a brief explanation on how your tax bills are calculated. I think well, I'm not going to say we, I'm going to say me. I'll speak for myself. I think I learned a lesson this past year about communication, and I think we need to share more. See, the thing is, a lot of things we'd have, people wouldn't show up. I mean, we have no citizens here tonight. So you can kind of take that as two ways. Either people don't care or they just think everything's going the way it is. And this is how it was last year at the budget hearing. And, you know, should we have communicated? Should I have communicated more? Possibly. But this year, going to communicate more. Your tax bills, you got an explanation this evening. After the 14th, that meeting, we're going to communicate about what that meeting means. Both Mr. Sullivan and I shared our personal opinions on future tax increases and how we're both not a fan of them. But communication happens both ways, though. If people talk about social media, I hate social media. I'm rarely on it. But I mean, if you want to shake your fist in the air and yell at the clouds, go ahead. That's fine. If you want to complain, that's your right. That's your right as an American to complain. But if you're looking for a solution, if you're looking for an answer, as was said earlier tonight, come to us. Emails on the website, phone numbers there. Better yet, we've got a meeting and we have a section, citizen comments. Don't be bashful. You have a comment, you have a question, we're easy to find. Thank you. Next on the agenda, adjournment.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.